My name is Amelia Carter. I signed the closing documents on a Tuesday afternoon in March, my hands surprisingly steady despite the magnitude of what I was doing. The penthouse on the 42nd floor represented a decade of sacrifice, hard work, and relentless ambition. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the Chicago skyline like a living painting. Brazilian walnut floors gleamed under recessed lighting, and the kitchen had marble countertops imported from Italy. It was mine, fully paid for, and I hadn't told a soul, not my parents, not my younger sister, not anyone. The secrecy felt instinctive. I was 33 years old, and everything I had achieved, every dollar, was mine alone. My career in pharmaceutical sales had been a battle. From an entry-level representative to regional director, I had clawed my way up through 14-hour days, weekend conferences, and late-night strategy sessions. Unlike others who relied on charm or luck, I built my success on meticulous research, cultivating strong relationships with physicians, and mastering every product in our portfolio. The decision to keep the purchase private stemmed from years of experience with my family. Growing up, my parents celebrated every small accomplishment my sister, Lila, achieved, while my successes were met with a polite nod at best. When I graduated with honors from college, my mother spent the evening praising Lila for finally passing her driving test on the 4th attempt. When I received my first promotion, my father reminded me that Lila was struggling to find a job and perhaps I could help her get an interview. Lila was 29 now, still living in my parents' basement, still waiting for life to hand her opportunities. She had hopped between colleges without completing a degree, drifted through retail jobs, and spent most of her time cultivating a social media presence that generated more envy than income. My parents continued funding her lifestyle, car insurance, credit card bills, gym membership, while I was expected to succeed without complaint. Moving into the condominium was a statement. I hired movers to handle the heavy work, supervising every detail. My furniture was minimal but high-end, a charcoal gray leather sofa, a glass dining table that seated 6, and a custom mattress that had cost more than my first car. I hung abstract art, installed smart home tech, and programmed a security system with codes only I knew. The building offered amenities I had dreamed about for years: a rooftop terrace, a fitness center with personal trainers, 24-hour concierge service, and private conference rooms. The monthly homeowners' fees were higher than my previous rent, but I could easily afford them now. My neighbors were surgeons, attorneys, and entrepreneurs. In the elevator, we exchanged nods, polite remarks about the weather, and nothing more. For once, no one was scrutinizing my life. I set up the second bedroom as a home office, installing shelves for my professional library and positioning my desk to face the skyline. Evenings were spent reviewing sales reports, preparing presentations, and watching the lake stretch toward the horizon as the city lights twinkled below. 3 weeks after moving in, I received a text from my mother, asking me to join them for Sunday lunch. The timing felt deliberate. I had been avoiding family gatherings, citing work. I arrived at the restaurant to find my parents and Lila already seated at a corner table. My mother, Vanessa, wore her best navy blouse, her signature perfume clinging to the air. My father, Daniel, had trimmed his beard, and Lila, absorbed in her phone, barely looked up. "Amelia, darling, so glad you could make it," my mother said, rising to hug me. I settled into my chair, napkin unfolded, keeping my tone neutral. "We hardly see you anymore." "Work has been demanding," I said. Daniel nodded, complimenting my dedication with a hint of condescension. "Your mother and I were just telling Lila how proud we are of both our daughters," he added. Lila smiled, a practiced expression that didn't reach her eyes. She wore a designer sweater, likely worth more than my car, and I felt the familiar pang of inequity. We made small talk about the weather, my father's golf game, neighborhood gossip. And then, inevitably, Vanessa leaned forward, her expression that of someone delivering news she expected me to accept. Amelia, we need to discuss something important. We know about your apartment. The restaurant's background noise seemed to fade. I sipped my water, meeting my mother's gaze without flinching. My condominium, I corrected quietly. Daniel chimed in, accusingly, quite an upgrade from that little apartment. You didn't mention you were moving. I didn't realize I needed permission, I said, keeping my voice even. I was 33 years old. Vanessa leaned closer. The point is family. Family shares important news. We had to hear about it from Barbara Hendricks at the grocery store. Her son works in real estate and handled a transaction in your building. Can you imagine? Guilt tried to creep in, but I straightened my spine. I owed no one an explanation. Lila muttered, still glued to her phone, that is rich coming from Miss Perfect. My mother dismissed it, softening her tone. Darling, we aren't upset you bought a place. We're thrilled. But it's time you helped your sister get on her feet. I looked at Lila. No, I said simply. Vanessa blinked. I'm sorry. No, I repeated. Lila is not moving into my condominium. My father tried to argue about family obligations, but I stood, grabbing my purse. She is 29. She's had enough time to figure out her life. The confrontation ended with me walking out. Spring air hit my face as adrenaline surged. This was my sanctuary. My boundaries would not be compromised. The wind was sharp as I walked back to my new condo, the spring air cutting through my coat. My hands trembled slightly, though not with fear, more with a mix of frustration and exhilaration. This apartment wasn't just a place to live, it was a fortress. Every polished surface, every window, every corner screamed independence. I had worked for this. And yet, the encounter at lunch lingered in my mind, gnawing at me. Once inside, I let my coat fall to the floor and sank into the leather sofa. I stared at the skyline, letting the city's lights blur into a golden haze. I wanted this space to be mine, not a playground for my family's demands. Still, I couldn't help but feel the tug of guilt. Vanessa's words echoed, family shares important news. Family helps each other. I poured myself a glass of wine and tried to focus on something else. My work email pinged, pulling me back into the rhythm of reality. Contracts, sales projections, and meeting reminders replaced the echo of my mother's voice. Work was predictable. Family was unpredictable. The next day, I decided to establish a routine in my home office. I positioned my laptop so I could watch the lake while I worked. Charts and reports scrolled across the screen as I plotted the next quarter's strategy. A knock at the door startled me. My heart skipped. I wasn't expecting anyone. A delivery man stood there, holding a large box. Signature, please, he said. I signed quickly and brought the box inside. It contained a gift from Lila, a designer handbag I had never asked for. I set it on the dining table and stared at it, conflicted. On one hand, it was thoughtful. On the other, it felt like a symbol of the constant pressure to appease her. I sat back, swirling my wine, and thought about the boundaries I had to set. It wasn't enough to say no once. I had to create walls, invisible but impenetrable, around my life. For years, I had allowed their opinions, their judgments, and their expectations to dictate my choices. No more. That evening, I took a long walk along the riverwalk. The breeze smelled faintly of blooming flowers, a reminder that spring was more than just a season, it was a metaphor. Life could renew itself, and I could choose the terms. I stopped at a small bench, watching joggers pass by and couples stroll hand in hand. I realized that independence wasn't just financial, it was emotional, mental, and sometimes, brutally social. A week passed. Lila texted repeatedly, asking when she could visit my new place. I ignored the messages. When Vanessa called, I let it go to voicemail. I needed time to fortify my space, both physically and mentally. I didn't want the penthouse to feel like a battleground the moment she stepped inside. Work became a refuge. I threw myself into client presentations, mentoring younger colleagues, and planning our regional sales conference. Each achievement felt like a brick in the wall I was building around my life, a wall that screamed, "This is mine." And yet, the ache of family ties lingered. On Saturday evening, the doorbell rang unexpectedly. I opened it to find Vanessa, smiling tightly, and Lila standing behind her, looking tentative. "We thought we'd drop by," Vanessa said. "Just to see the apartment." I studied them carefully. Vanessa's perfume filled the air, and Lila's gaze flitted around the living room, taking in every detail with that calculating smile I knew too well. "I'm in the middle of work," I said. "I didn't expect guests." Vanessa placed a hand on my arm. "Amelia, we just want to see how you're doing. Isn't that fair?" I exhaled slowly. "You can't just drop in unannounced," I said firmly. "I value my privacy. I work long hours, and I need my space. If you want to visit, we'll schedule it. Otherwise, I'll have to ask you to leave." Lila's expression shifted, a flash of irritation crossing her face. Vanessa's smile faltered, but she nodded. "Fine," she said. "We'll schedule." As they left, I closed the door and leaned against it, feeling a surge of triumph. Setting boundaries wasn't easy, especially when it involved family. But each time I enforced them, I reclaimed a piece of myself. I returned to my sofa, poured another glass of wine, and let the city lights wash over me. Independence was lonely at times, but it was also exhilarating. And for the first time, I truly felt like I was living life on my own terms. I had walls, routines, and a sense of control that I hadn't felt in years. But of course, life, or in my case, family, has a way of testing even the strongest boundaries. It was a quiet Monday morning when the first warning sign appeared. I had just settled into my home office with a cup of coffee and my laptop humming in front of me when a notification popped up, an email from Vanessa. The subject line read, "Important family news." My stomach sank. Important family news usually meant drama, manipulation, or a demand I couldn't ignore. I hesitated, my finger hovering over the mouse. Part of me wanted to open it immediately, to face whatever storm was coming. The other part, the part one had spent weeks strengthening, urged me to pause, to breathe. I took a deep inhale, and then clicked. The email was long, overly dramatic, and entirely unnecessary. My parents were planning a family reunion next month, and apparently, my attendance was mandatory. Vanessa detailed every activity, brunches, sightseeing tours, even the hotel rooms assigned for each family member. It was as though I had no say in the matter, as though my life existed solely to accommodate theirs. I felt the familiar surge of anger and resentment. But this time, I didn't react impulsively. Instead, I wrote a reply, calm, concise, and firm. I explained that my schedule was packed with work commitments, that I had personal obligations, and that I could not attend. I suggested a private dinner in the future instead, on my terms. I hit send and immediately felt a sense of relief. The email was polite, assertive, and left no room for guilt trips. I poured another cup of coffee and tried to focus on work, but the buzzing of my phone interrupted me again. Lila had called, not once, but 3 times in rapid succession. I stared at her name on the screen, feeling my chest tighten. My fingers hovered over the decline button, but curiosity won. I answered. Amelia. I just wanted to check on the apartment. Isn't it gorgeous? Lila's voice was sugary, but I could hear the edge beneath it, the calculated charm that had made me wary for years. It's fine, I said flatly, keeping my tone neutral. I'm busy right now. Oh, come on. Just a quick visit. I promise I won't stay long, she pleaded. No, Lila. I work here. I have responsibilities. Please respect my time and my space. There was a pause. I imagined her blinking, caught off guard by my firmness. Fine, she finally said. But you're missing out. The line went dead. I leaned back in my chair and exhaled, feeling a strange mix of pride and exhaustion. Enforcing boundaries was empowering, yes, but it was also emotionally draining. I had expected resistance from my parents, but Lila's persistence struck deeper. She thrived on undermining my independence. The rest of the week passed with minor skirmishes, a text from Vanessa about forgetting to include me in a family Zoom call, a delivery from Lila that I didn't order, and several calls I ignored. Each incident tested my resolve. Each time, I reminded myself that independence was more than physical space, it was mental, emotional, and unshakable. By Friday evening, I realized something. The penthouse wasn't just a home, it was my proving ground. Every time I maintained my boundaries, I strengthened a muscle I had long neglected. I poured a glass of wine, letting the city lights reflect off the walls, and smiled. For the first time in years, I felt untouchable, not because my family couldn't reach me, but because I had chosen my own limits and I was unafraid to enforce them. And yet, in the quiet moments, a flicker of doubt remained. How long could I maintain this balance before the family pressure escalated? How far would they go to pull me back into their world? I didn't have the answers, but I did have my resolve. And for now, that was enough. It started with a phone call from an unknown number late one Thursday evening. I rarely picked up numbers I didn't recognize, but something in my gut told me to answer. Amelia, a familiar voice whispered. My heart sank. It was my father. Dad, I said cautiously. I need to talk to you about something important, he said, urgency dripping from every word. I braced myself. Every important family conversation was a trap, a subtle attempt to guilt me or pull me into chaos. I'm working, I said. Can this wait? No, he insisted. This can't wait. It's about the business. I froze. My father rarely involved me in his work. Our family business had been his kingdom and Vanessa's playground. What about it? I asked. He hesitated. Lila, she's made some decisions that could affect you directly. You need to know before it's too late. I frowned, suspicion immediately rising. Lila had been steadily inserting herself into positions of power, and now she was somehow trying to drag me into the fallout. Explain, I demanded, keeping my voice steady. There's a new contract, my father began. It's a big deal, and, well, your signature is technically required. Lila said she'd handle it, but I thought you should be aware. I felt a mix of anger and disbelief. This wasn't about involving me, this was about controlling me. They were trying to corner me, making it seem like I had no choice. I don't want to be involved, Dad, I said firmly. Lila handles it if she wants to, but I'm not signing anything. This is my life, not hers. Amelia, his voice faltered, a rare vulnerability breaking through. We're just trying to protect the family. You don't understand the stakes. I clenched my fists. Protect the family. They had spent years undermining me, dictating every move I made. No, Dad. I understand perfectly. You want control, not protection. And I'm done letting you have it. The line went silent. I could almost hear the gears turning in his mind, the struggle between tradition, expectation, and my stubborn independence. Finally, he sighed. I guess I'll let you handle it your way. I hung up, my heart still racing. The confrontation left me shaken but resolute. The truth was clear, my family wouldn't stop testing my boundaries. They would always try to manipulate situations, especially when I dared to assert myself. The next day, a package arrived at my apartment. It was a beautifully wrapped box from Lila, with a note, "Thought you'd enjoy this. Don't worry, it's nothing serious." Inside was a high-end gadget I had mentioned months ago. On the surface, it seemed like a harmless gift. But I knew better. It was a statement, a reminder that they could still insert themselves into my life, even when I thought I had full control. I placed the gift on my kitchen counter, untouched. It wasn't the object itself that mattered, it was the message. They were testing my patience, seeing how far they could push me before I broke. That evening, I reflected on everything, the call, the gift, the endless attempts to control me. I realized something essential: independence wasn't just about saying no. It was about recognizing manipulation for what it was and refusing to participate in it emotionally or mentally. I poured a glass of wine, sat by the window, and let the city lights reflect in the glass. A smile crept onto my face. They could try, but I had found a new strength within myself, an unshakable resolve. And yet, deep down, a tiny voice whispered, they wouldn't give up so easily. The next battle was coming, and I had to be ready. It started with an email from someone I considered a friend, Emma. We had grown close over the past year, sharing everything from career struggles to late-night secrets. I trusted her completely. Or at least, I thought I did. The subject line was innocuous, urgent, need your input. Curious, I opened it immediately. Inside was a draft of a confidential contract from the family business, my family business. My eyes widened as I realized the implications. Not only had Emma accessed sensitive documents, but she had also annotated them with her own suggestions. I felt a rush of anger. Betrayal isn't just about lies, it's about someone using the trust you've given them as a weapon. I stared at the screen, my hands trembling. I confronted her immediately, calling her phone. Emma, what is this? Oh, Amelia. Her voice was calm, almost too calm. It's not what you think. I just thought you'd want to see it. Lila sent it to me, she wanted me to get your feedback before it went through. My blood boiled. So you're saying you're just a messenger? You're complicit, whether you admit it or not. I didn't mean to, she started, but I cut her off. Don't. I trusted you, Emma. And now I see what kind of friend you are, someone willing to betray me for convenience, for approval. I don't need this. The call ended with a click, leaving me in stunned silence. I had lost more than a document, I had lost a piece of my confidence in people. That night, I sat alone in my apartment, replaying every conversation, every laugh, every shared secret. Had I been naive? Blind to the red flags? The truth was painful, even the people I let close had strings attached, strings I didn't see until they were tugged mercilessly. The next morning, I decided to take control. I went to the office, determined to handle things on my own. I reviewed the contract, annotating it carefully, preparing to send a revised version that would protect my interests and expose Lila's manipulations. But when I arrived, I found a note on my desk: "We need to talk. Meet me in the conference room." Lila. My heart sank. Lila was always strategic, always calculated. Walking into that room felt like stepping into a trap, but I had no choice. Lila was waiting, a sly smile on her face. "Amelia," she said, voice sweet as poison. "I hear you've been looking at things you shouldn't." I squared my shoulders. "I'm looking out for what's right. Something you wouldn't understand." She laughed softly. "Oh, I understand perfectly. But you forget, I've been playing this game longer than you've been breathing. You can't win by being naive." Her words stung, but I refused to show weakness. "I'm not naive. I just won't let anyone manipulate me, especially not my own family." She leaned back, eyes glinting. "Family? You mean power? And power is something you're still learning to hold." I left the office that day with a new understanding: betrayal isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet, subtle, hidden behind smiles and familiar voices. And if I wanted to survive, I had to learn to see it before it struck. Back at home, I locked my laptop, made notes on my strategies, and planned my next move. The lines were clear now: I could trust no one completely, not even those I called friends. But amid the anger and hurt, a small fire ignited inside me. Betrayal hurt, but it also sharpened me. Every lie, every secret, every act of deception was now fuel for my determination. And I vowed, quietly, to myself, no one, not my family, not friends, not enemies, would ever have that power over me again. I spent the weekend planning. I drew diagrams, made lists of allies and potential threats, and studied Lila's every move. She was clever, but predictable, if you paid attention. I had always underestimated her, thinking her confidence and charm were her only weapons. I was wrong. Her real weapon was information, and she believed she controlled it all. That was about to change. Monday morning, I arrived at the office early, my coffee steaming in one hand, my notes in the other. I started by quietly talking to the staff, the ones who had grown tired of Lila's manipulations and whispers of favoritism. People were hesitant at first, wary of being caught in the crossfire. But I was patient. I listened to their frustrations, promised discretion, and slowly, they began to trust me. By noon, I had a small team who believed in me and my vision. Together, we reviewed financial records, contracts, and internal emails, searching for patterns, anything Lila might have overlooked. And there it was, a series of mismanaged funds that, if exposed, could not only embarrass her but also undermine her authority. I knew I had to be careful. This wasn't just about revenge, it was about securing my position and protecting the company. One wrong move and everything I had worked for would crumble. I printed copies, stored digital backups, and prepared a plan to present it in a way that looked like initiative rather than retaliation. The next challenge was Lila. She was sharp, always watching, always testing boundaries. I needed to draw her out without tipping her off. So I scheduled a one-on-one meeting under the guise of discussing a minor project update. She entered the room, all smiles and calculated charm, unaware that I held the cards now. "Amelia, how's everything going?" she asked, casually leaning against the edge of my desk. "Busy, as always," I replied, keeping my tone calm. "Actually, I noticed some discrepancies in the recent reports. I've taken the liberty of reviewing them and preparing a summary for you." Her smile faltered, just slightly. Discrepancies. Oh. Let's see. I handed her the folder. She skimmed it, her expression carefully neutral. Inside, every misstep, every oversight, every piece of Lila's manipulation was documented. The numbers didn't lie. You did all this?" she asked, trying to mask the panic in her voice. "Yes," I said, meeting her gaze steadily. "And I've also prepared a few suggestions to ensure our processes are more transparent moving forward." Lila's eyes narrowed. She realized she had been outmaneuvered, not by someone with brute force, but by someone who had learned to observe, to think ahead, and to act strategically. "Impressive," she said finally, her voice low, controlled. "You're learning faster than I expected." "Thank you," I replied, my lips curling into a small, confident smile. "But I think we can do even better. Together, if we focus on the right priorities." Walking out of that meeting, I felt a surge of power. Not arrogance, not vengeance, true power. I had taken control without giving in to anger or rash decisions. I had reclaimed my ground while keeping my integrity intact. That evening, as I returned to my apartment, I looked at the skyline of the city below. The lights sparkled like possibilities, endless and promising. I knew Lila wouldn't stop trying, and Emma might still stumble in my path. But I had learned something crucial: preparation, observation, and patience were far more effective than reacting emotionally. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was the one steering the ship. The morning started quietly. I arrived at the office, calm, collected, and ready. Lila was already there, her confident smile a little tighter than usual. She knew something was coming, but she didn't know what. And that uncertainty, that tiny crack in her armor, was exactly what I needed. I called a meeting with the board, including my parents and Emma. They all filed into the sleek conference room, murmuring quietly among themselves, curiosity written on every face. Lila took her usual seat at the head, ready to assert control. She looked at me, expecting hesitation, expecting weakness. She would be disappointed. "Thank you all for coming," I began, my voice steady and composed. "I wanted to discuss some concerns regarding the company's operations and the recent management decisions." Lila's brow furrowed, just slightly. I could see her calculating, trying to figure out if this was a minor issue or something bigger. I handed each board member a copy of the report I had prepared, documented discrepancies, mismanaged funds, favoritism, and evidence of manipulation. Every detail was precise, every fact verified. The room fell silent. You could feel the weight of the truth pressing down on everyone. Even my parents, who had long been swayed by Lila's charm, exchanged uneasy glances. Emma fidgeted nervously, realizing that the tide had shifted. "Amelia, what is this?" Lila asked, trying to maintain composure. "It's a reflection of the company's reality," I replied calmly. "And a roadmap for correcting it. I believe that with the right leadership and transparency, we can not only fix these issues but thrive." My parents looked at each other, then at me. I could see a flicker of pride, mixed with surprise, and maybe even a little guilt. They had underestimated me, just like everyone else had. But not anymore. One by one, board members voiced their support. They appreciated the clarity, the evidence, and the strategic approach I had taken. Lila tried to argue, tried to charm and intimidate, but her words fell flat. I had anticipated her every move, and I stayed focused, professional, unshaken. By the end of the meeting, the decision was clear: I would take a more prominent leadership role in the company, with oversight of the critical projects Lila had previously dominated. Lila was left with little authority, forced to answer to the very systems she had tried to control. Walking out of that room, I felt a mixture of relief and triumph. Not because I had defeated someone else, but because I had proven to myself that I could rise above manipulation, betrayal, and family politics. I had done it with integrity, strategy, and patience, not anger. That evening, as I returned to my apartment, I looked out over the city, the lights twinkling like the opportunities ahead. Emma called me later, apologizing for underestimating me and promising to support the changes. My parents sent a quiet text, acknowledging my efforts and pride. For the first time in years, I felt at peace with my family and my future. I had learned that strength isn't about reacting in the moment, it's about planning, observing, and acting with precision when the time is right. And most importantly, I realized that even in the face of deception and betrayal, it's possible to reclaim your power and write your own story. I'm Amelia, and I am no longer a pawn in anyone's game. I am the player, and I am ready for whatever comes next.